If you want to keep the status quo, if you don't want to improve with kettlebells, especially with the long cycle, with doubles, then you better click away right now. Gregory from Lebe here. We're all about kettlebells. So if you are into kettlebells, then like the video and consider subscribing and let me know in the comments what your technique looks like and if this secret that I'm about to share with you is helping you with your kettlebell journey. So the technique that I'm about to show you, I call it scare tactics. That means you scare your body or your organism with fairly heavy weights that really challenge you, and then you go down to your working weights. So my working weights in that case is double 20s. So I'm intentionally choosing the double 24s to make the double 20s more comfortable. And I also use some form of pre-exhaustion technique where prior to this 1 minute long cycle with the double 24s, I was doing back squats, 5 reps, 3 sets up to 100 kilos. I was doing pull-ups and dips, 10 reps each in a superset, and I was doing 50 push-ups. And then I started to engage in the long side. I want my body to be pre-exhausted so I can highlight the problems that I have with the technique. And remember, I don't want to compete. It's not about competing. It's about mastering this beautiful lift. So here I go with the double 24s. That's 48 kilograms. So, boom. I got it, and I was like, okay, let's see how the jerk feels. Woof! As you can see, my arms are not fairly extended. I have to struggle to a certain extent, and boom. Now here I felt like when I watched Bill Esch do the long cycle, she really pulls them up and jumps under them. And the funny thing is, and if you don't do it, did you see what happened? You slam the kettlebells into your elbows because you're not softly landing them. And Dennis Vazilev told me that the heavyweights, the champion weights, double 32s, you feel them when you come from the backswing into the clean. At the same time, I understand this, yet at the same time, this also demonstrates how humble Dennis really is because I felt them in the jerk. The jerk is really takes a lot of force, takes a lot of time. And let me tell you guys, I finally brought my jerk to a level where I am kind of satisfied to a certain degree. You just see, I'm hustling, I'm grinding. Finally, I'm a little bit satisfied with my jerk, but I'm still slamming those heavy weights because it's hard for me to grasp how heavy the weight really is. So I'm using a lot of force and hence they are slamming into my shoulder and boom, wow. And I was like, woo, that was a tough one. Now here are my working weights and here you see the scare tactics pay off. And as a disclaimer, you only want to use scare tactics if your technique is really safe. Okay, it has to be on par. Now, another thing that I want to highlight is watch me how I set the bells up. Now, this is so important to me. I always make sure that I have at least 30 seconds before my set starts, and I believe in the 4-time method because then you don't have to count reps. That means you can focus exclusively on your technique. And the setup is so crucial because with competition kettlebells, you have to make sure that your backswing, your pendulum leg action is safe and that the kettlebell travels fairly beautifully between your legs. Otherwise, you really hit your knees or hit your quads. So the setup is so crucial because if you stand too wide, then you lose power in the jerk. If you stand too close, then you slam the kettlebells into your quads or your knees. So I always make sure, and I learned this from Dennis, to really perfect my stance before I start lifting. So I stand between the kettlebells, the kettlebells are between my feet. I make sure that the outside of my feet connect with the bells, and then I don't step back because if I would step back right now, I would lose my position. Instead, what I do is I pull the bells in front. That way my stance is safe. Getting ready for the lift. 3, 2, 1, let's go. Now watch me work with my actual working weights. It felt so comfortable and it's so hard to describe. You really have to feel this, that you have to use weight that is beyond what you usually work with, and then your actual working weight feels not like featherweight, but it feels more comfortable. And what I've really perfected now is, I think to a certain extent, is my jerk. And another thing that I want to tell you is, watch this. I go down into the dip, I go into the bump, And here is something that's fairly interesting. This is called the bump, where you transport the kettlebell into the top fixation thanks to the power of your legs that you transfer into your elbows and your arms because you keep them connected to your iliac crest of your hip. So the kettlebell travels upward, right? You really use a lot of force from your bump, yet when I see other athletes, I see them really fully extend their hips, ankles, and knees. I don't do this because I believe I have some sort of shear sensitivity in my spine and I want to protect it. And if I extend more, I feel like my spine is not feeling as well. And so I have a fairly shallow bump, but I have a fairly deep second dip. Okay? And what you sometimes see with the athletes is they have a very strong bump and maybe they don't have a fairly deep second dip. It depends though. If you work with very heavy weights, the dip goes very deep. Yet, I think my technique, and I see this with the lighter weights, but maybe I'm mistaken, but I think I see this with the lighter weights. You go into the bump and you go quickly, boom, into the second dip to really catch the weight to profit from the law of inertia. So here we go, boom. And finally looks a little bit more smooth. I still have to work on my perfect rack position so that I really, you see the kettlebells are traveling back and forth a little bit. I'm still working on finding the perfect position. That one was fairly good. Yes, and what I've also learned is really extending your chest, okay? Extending and pushing out your T-spine when you're in the top fixation requires a lot of mobility. Boom, that was a nice set. I really loved it. I love the long cycle. Now here goes double 16s from 40 down to 32. And as you can see, I do the same thing with the setup. Now 32s, the reason why I do this, double 16s is I use lighter weights to work on my technique. So I thought, let's go a little bit faster. I think I'm not as fast, but the idea is to really perfect it. Now, as you can see with this weight, I'm fairly a little bit faster. And when I grab him, I land more softly because it's easier for me to control now. Yeah, and I'm using a fairly quicker pace now. Yes. The rack position is fairly nice. Oh man, and the jerk, I'm kind of satisfied now. Let me tell you how long the jerk took. And, I recently watched a video from the Pioneer where he says, it's a great thing if you combine all the athletic capabilities and modalities that are out there. And while I do agree, some powerlifting stuff, some strongman stuff, some kettlebell stuff, some bodybuilding stuff, what maybe lacks in that regard is you always average at everything, but you never perfect one thing. And what I'm trying to perfect right here is my kettlebell technique. That's why I love it so much. I really love the long cycle. It's such a powerful exercise. You have hips, you have legs, you have upper body, you have abdominals, you have your back. Everything's in there. It's such a powerful exercise. And so here I go. I finished with double 12s, which is fairly easy for me. But watch what I did. I intentionally didn't go fast. I was going slow. You see? I'm taking my time to work through the phases, taking my time to perfect the rack position, to perfect the top fixation. And what I feel is when I'm using fairly light weights, I don't even have to use a lot of bump. Okay? You can see the bump is even more shallow than with the heavier weights. But I'm trying to perfect my jerk. And the beautiful thing about light weights is with light weights, you can get a fairly amount of volume done without putting too much stress on your system, while at the same time being able to perfect and work on your technique. That's why light weights are powerful. And when we listen to Dr. Brad Schoenfeld, who's the hypertrophy doc, he says one of the most important factors when it comes to muscle building is mechanical stress. So this causes mechanical stress. And yeah, I'm taking my time with the double 12s and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the long cycle so much. And I recently had this epiphany moment a couple of weeks ago where I was working on my jerk just for a couple of seconds or just for a couple of reps. And then I realized, wow, now I'm actually practicing. And Luca, my brother Luca, told me this. He's a certified SFG. A strong first leader as far as I'm aware. And he said, it's not about working out, it's about practice. And in that epiphany moment, I was like, wow, now I'm actually engaging in practice, and my body, I'm starting to sweat. I'm starting to get this awesome vibe and feeling of that you get when you're working out. But the idea was different. The idea was practice and practicing the lift. That was just an epiphany moment that I had that I'm now always incorporating in these exercises where I'm like, it's not about training, no, working out. It's about improving the lift. And on a final note, I saw this from one of the Russian athletes that I follow on Instagram. We always have this discussion about, well, isn't a long cycle or a rack bad for your lower back? It actually isn't if, let me show you this, if you rack the kettlebell and if we draw the straight line, which represents gravity, if we have the straight line, as you can see, it's in front of the hip joint and in front of the knee joint. And in that case, you are safe. The problem arises if you rack the kettlebells even higher. That's what a lot of beginners do. And now the weight's up here, and then gravity pulls down behind your hip joint and behind your knee joint. And this is where problems may arise. So the rack position is something that takes a lot of time. To sum it all up, the idea of scare tactics is, first of all, you want to use a weight that is above your normal working weights to challenge your system and to shock the body. And Pavel even talks about this. He says the beautiful thing about this 4-kilogram increments is it shocks your body to a level where heavy weights become instructive and they force you to improve your technique. And the second thing is pre-exhaustion, where you want to work on improving your technique and highlighting the flaws. And you can do this by getting tired in the first place. Not tired to a degree where you can't handle no weights anymore. That's not the idea. But like I mentioned, I did a fairly amount of volume with barbells and body weight before I engaged in the long cycle to see if my technique, when I lose some sort of focus because I'm tired, if my technique depends on my automated systems, on my habits, or if I still have to think about it. So in that case, I was fairly satisfied. I was like, wow, I'm a little bit tired, but I still can depend on the powerful habits that I built while doing this exercise. 90 Days of Kettlebells is an online workout course for beginners who want to train at home, lose weight, and achieve lasting results without wasting time and money with crash diets and unused gym memberships. The program works as follows. You will do 3 kettlebell workouts per week that gradually increase in difficulty. You'll also build 3 powerful eating habits that have proven successful in our coaching. As the name implies, the program lasts 90 days and you will have lifelong access after purchase. We also include live accountability sessions where you will publicly state your goals. Psychology shows us that if we make our goals public, our adherence to the process and the program increases dramatically. If you have been struggling to put together an elaborate kettlebell workout system while trying to lose weight, then 90 Days of Kettlebells is for you. The price of 90 Days of Kettlebells is $59 per month for 3 months, and you can save 20% with a one-time payment of $147. We'll open registration only to a small number of new clients. Join the waiting list now to get access 24 hours before the general public. Link is in the description.